1897, the first advertisement ever copyrighted in America. A box bursts open. A woman showers four men in cigarettes. They unfurl a banner. "We all smoke." That is where modern advertising begins, and the very first thing it ever sold was a cigarette. 50 years later, they had an army. 20 million Americans would die from it. And this film, showing exactly what the smoke does to a lung, it already existed, 10 years before America was warned. Here is what nobody tells you about that first film. It was not shown in a cinema. It was projected onto rooftops, in the open air, over the heads of a crowd who had never seen a moving picture before. The very first thing that moving pictures were ever used to do was sell, and the product chosen to prove that advertising worked was tobacco. Everything that came after, every jingle, every slogan, every 30-second spot you have ever sat through is descended from that one reel. So how do you sell a habit to an entire country? You start somewhere nobody ever put in a commercial. A field. Tobacco is not manufactured. It is grown, cut by hand, carried, and then hung in the dark for weeks while the leaf slowly changes color. Look at how much labor is standing in this frame. Men in rows, moving plants. This is farming, and it is slow, and it is seasonal, and it depends entirely on weather, and almost none of it ever reached the screen, because the story was never about the leaf. Watch what the camera goes looking for instead. It goes indoors, machines, rows of them, hands moving faster than you can follow, paper, tobacco, and a blade, repeating 1,000 times a minute. The farm has vanished. This is an assembly line, and what it is assembling is a habit, at a scale no human hand could ever match. And that scale changes everything because it creates a problem nobody had before. Once you can make a thing by the million, the thing itself stops being the point. Every cigarette here is identical. Every pack is identical. So what exactly is anyone choosing between? Nothing. And that is the moment advertising becomes necessary. The advertiser now has to supply a difference that does not physically exist. He has to invent it and then make you feel it. That invention is not a side effect of the industry. That invention is the industry. There is one other way to manufacture a difference, and you have watched it 1,000 times without ever naming it. The demonstration. Look at this. A single adhesive strip, holding an egg, lifting it clean off the table. It proves nothing about anything you would ever actually do. Nobody is hanging eggs from their fingertips, but it is visible, it is instant, and it is very hard to argue with because it appeared to happen right in front of you. Advertising had discovered that a picture of proof works almost as well as proof, and costs a great deal less to produce. Which brings us to the strangest hour in advertising history, because when you cannot say your product is better, you make it perform. Look at this. 1948, cigarettes standing up on their own, marching, falling into formation like a parade ground. Somebody built these. Somebody moved each cigarette a fraction of an inch, exposed a single frame of film, and moved it again, thousands of times, for 60 seconds of television. Nobody works that hard on an argument. You only work that hard on a spell, and they did it more than once. Here they are again, in another reel, arranged into a square dance, partners, turns, a pattern you are meant to recognize from a hall you have actually stood in, and look at what they are spelling out. The letters are not printed on the screen. They are built out of the product itself, standing in rows, holding the shape long enough for you to read it. The cigarette is not illustrating the message here. The cigarette has become the message. It works because it does something no argument can do. It makes the product alive. It gives it a body, a rhythm, a will of its own. You are not being sold a leaf wrapped in paper anymore. You are being introduced to a character, and characters are things that people become loyal to. But spectacle only buys attention. To buy belief, advertising needed something it did not have and could not manufacture: authority. So watch very carefully where it goes looking for it. It goes to the white coat. This is a deodorant commercial. Read what it calls itself. A doctor's discovery. Not a doctor's opinion, not a doctor's suggestion. A discovery. That is the vocabulary of the laboratory, bolted onto a product that has nothing whatsoever to do with a laboratory. And once that door is open, it never closes again. Here is why it works so well on screen. A white coat is instantly readable. You do not have to be told that this person knows something, you simply see it in under a second before anybody has said a word. Advertising had found the fastest shortcut to trust ever invented, and it did not have to earn a single step of it. And it scaled. Watch this. Ranks of them in white, filling the frame, walking away from camera in perfect order. This is not a hospital. This is a commercial using the look of expertise as a visual argument. The coat is doing all the talking, and the coat was not the only thing worth borrowing. Here is a razor commercial, and here are two professional ball players, named on the screen in uniform, shaving. Nothing about playing baseball qualifies anybody to assess a razor blade. That was never the point. The point is that you already trusted these faces from somewhere else entirely, and that trust could be picked up, carried across, and set down beside a product in a shop. Authority did not have to be earned, it only had to be recognized. Now compare all of that to the real thing. This is an actual laboratory in an actual research film from 1954. The same coats, the same glassware, the same careful hands. The difference is not in the picture at all. The difference is that these people are trying to find something out. The commercial already knew what it wanted you to conclude before it started rolling. But the most effective advertising ever made does not shout, and it does not wear a coat. It does something far quieter than that. Look, a beach, a couple, somebody laughing at something we cannot hear. Nothing is being claimed here at all. And that is precisely the point. There is no argument to disagree with, no promise you could check, just a pleasant afternoon that happens to contain a cigarette. Watch how the product is placed. Never center frame, never explained. It is simply there, the way a chair is there. This is the most powerful thing advertising ever learned. You do not have to convince anyone that a thing is good. You only have to show it inside a life that they already want. Argument invites resistance. Normal does not. Normal is not something you agree with. It is something you absorb. And normal was everywhere. On the beach, at the table, in the car, in the hands of people who looked exactly like the audience watching them. Nobody in this frame is making a case. They are just having an afternoon. A generation did not decide to start smoking. It simply grew up inside a world where everybody already had. And then there is the sheer volume of it. This is what an evening actually looked like. Cereal, a headache tablet, a tire, a shampoo, an airline, one after another, each one a small, complete, beautifully made argument for something. Nobody sat down to study any of this. It simply ran in the corner of the room while the family talked over it. That is the part that is easy to miss. None of these commercials had to win on their own. They only had to be present, and to be present again next week and the week after that. Repetition is not a weak form of persuasion. Over years, it is the strongest one there is, because it never announces itself as persuasion at all. Which is what makes the next part so strange, because while all of this was going out over the air, this was also being filmed. 1954, a classroom science film. There is no music in it. Nothing about it is dramatic. It simply shows you the route, into the mouth, down the throat, into the lung. Now watch the particles. That is not a metaphor, and it is not an animation invented later for effect. That is the film's own diagram of what it understood was being left behind inside a body, drawn by the people who made it, a decade before the government said anything to the public at all. And it does not stop at diagrams. It goes to the bench, glassware, condensers, a cigarette burned by a machine so the residue can be caught and weighed. Somebody is measuring this, carefully, on film, in 1954. It goes further than that. Here the film turns to living tissue, and to the small blood vessels you can actually watch narrow. There is nothing sensational in how it is shot. It is patient, and it is close, and it is completely unlike anything that was being broadcast in the same years. This was not hidden. It was a teaching film. It was made to be shown to students in a classroom. So the knowledge was not missing, it was simply somewhere else. It was in a science reel with no music and no audience, while the reel with the beach and the laughter had a network, a sponsor, and 30 million people a night. It is a genuinely strange feeling, watching these two things beside each other. One reel is selling you an afternoon. The other is quietly drawing what that afternoon does to the inside of a chest. They were made in the same country, in the same decade, for the same audience, and only one of them was ever going to be shown during a variety show. In 1964, the Surgeon General finally said it out loud. In 1971, cigarette advertising was removed from American television altogether. The commercials stopped, and notice what did not stop. Not one of the techniques, the performing product, the borrowed white coat, the pleasant afternoon with nothing being claimed. Those were never regulated because they were never the product. They were the grammar. The machine did not stop because the machine was never really about cigarettes. It was a method. Make it perform. Borrow authority, make it look normal. That method outlived the product it was invented for, and you have watched it work on 100 other things since, in exactly the same order. And it is worth being precise about what actually changed in 1971. A product left a medium. That is all that happened. The audience did not become harder to persuade. None of the techniques stopped working. They simply moved to the next product and the next screen. Which leaves one honest question, and it is not a question about 1954. When you have seen something often enough, in enough ordinary hands, in enough pleasant afternoons, how would you tell the difference between a thing that is genuinely safe and a thing you have simply stopped noticing? If your family kept an old advertisement like these, or there is one you have never quite been able to forget, tell me about it. I read every single one.